Thank you for coming in here today to talk about the observation yesterday.
Okay.
First, we're going to go through the teacher observation reflection form that Dr. Moorhead usually does. Then I'll ask you some questions and follow up with the standards and evidence that I found.
Sure.
Okay. As you reflect on the lesson, to what extent were students proactively engaged?
Well, let's see. Oh. Proactively engaged, huh?
That kind of means about the same thing.
Yeah, it's a large group lesson. It's a large group whole class lesson where their engagement part is to be listening to the story so that they can be answering the follow-up questions in order to discuss the idea of analyzing and visualizing. I would think that some of the questioning that was being asked would be engaging them. The turn and talk strategy that they had to use was engaging them as far as being able to listen and then be able to respond to the question and, being able to talk to your partner about that question as well, and then being able to share out in a large group about what your partner said. So if I'm looking at the large group lesson, that's how I see they were proactively engaged. If I'm thinking about when they're in their small groups, because you saw part of that lesson too, I love the small group stations because each child is motivated to take care of themselves, choosing books that are at their appropriate level. They were making sentences that day, so that was differentiated in that way that one kid could put 2 words into a sentence, and some kids put 4 or 5 words in a sentence. So they were being engaged by having the variety of different stations to go to every 15 minutes. And then at the end, you got to see the phonics, which was another large group lesson, but that allowed the kids to do activities, or I'm trying to remember if you got to see them using the cards or not.
Not yet.
Okay.
But, all right, so that sounds good. And we'll talk a little bit more about this as we get to some of the other questions. This is just kind of the observation of reflection form that, like I said, she usually has you do it between the 2 conferences, but being a volunteer, let's get into this one. What evidence do you have to show that students learned what you intended? And if your instructional goals were met, how did you know? So it's kind of like
the end of the day.
I know. And it's a Thursday.
Yeah.
Let's see. So I guess this would be kind of asking about how you informally assess their learning, since they didn't do any formal assessments at this time. How could you tell they were getting it?
Well, I would say that when they come back to small group with me, and we're talking about analyzing characters in their small group book, if I'm seeing that carryover would be my informal observation.
And then when you see it or don't see it, then you can reinforce
the next day. And that's what I did today. Was that even yesterday, they weren't picking up on character traits. So today, I had a big poster that was examples of character traits, and we broke it down by looking at individual characters in today's passage and breaking it down into even smaller parts and looking for those clues. But I would say that how do I know would be back in small group. Are they doing that carryover, that application?
Okay, did you alter your goals or instructional plan as you taught the lesson?
I didn't, just because with the new reading program, I really wanted to be true to it. And so, no, I did not adhere from the program's plan, especially being in the first year program.
If you had the opportunity to teach this lesson again to the same group of students, what would you do differently?
Oh, hindsight 2020 is always a blessing. I definitely know for next year that I'm definitely going to have this poster that I've now created that separates character feelings from character traits. That made the lesson go so much more smoother today. Because it's a new program, because they've never heard of character traits or analyzed character, I just think that explaining what analyzing means, having those posters of examples of traits really helps them pay more attention or really tune into the characters themselves, because it just did not go as well as planned. And trusting myself, too.
All right, now some of the questions. Okay, so you kind of answered my first question, but if there's anything else, what has occurred in class related to that objective since the lesson? Kind of told me a few things about what you did differently today, you know, to kind of reinforce and in small groups. Let me see. What behaviors did the students demonstrate during the lesson?
Positive or negative?
It's up to you. Just in general, kind of some reflection on that.
You know, I had just taught the kids screen spots because we were going from one spot in the classroom to another spot in the classroom, and we needed to make that transition smooth. So transitional time and finding their new spots, they did a fabulous job. So when I said screen spots, boom, they were there. And we didn't take any time away from instructional time. So I thought they did an excellent job on that. Behavior-wise, you saw or you heard me tell them that I needed to see more hands because I was getting some of the same hands over and over. And I should have done what I usually do in the morning, and that is what I call cold call. And cold call is, I don't need a hand up. I'm going to call on any of you to get an answer. And so I know that in your notes you mentioned I should probably try sticks, and I thought, oh, I wish you could have seen me do cold call because they know that and they've been trained to do that. That would have managed some alternative answers and had you know, more hands up because I didn't think that went as well. As far as other positive behaviors, right? That's the question.
Just behaviors the student demonstrated during the lesson. So
no, they really did a good job, especially for the whole group mini lesson. When we got to the phonics, so I had one student where there was just proximity issues, and the one girl was touching the other girl, and I asked her to scoot up, and she didn't scoot up. She was kind of being a little obstinate at that point. That's who she is as an individual. I'm glad she remained calm because I knew that person didn't stop touching him. So that was a distraction. But they did a great job of getting right back on task. Okay.
What do you think was the most and then least successful things that you did during the lesson?
The least successful was the teaching the reading skill of analyzing character. I told you that sometimes I just need to trust my years of experience and not feel like I have to go by a script. Because with the new reading program, they want you to say this and this and this and this, and I could have said the same message just in my own words, and yet I didn't just trust my feelings. So I didn't really like how analyzing lesson went. On the other hand, a success, I felt the phonics lesson was very good. These kids had to learn long A digraphs. They had to learn the combination of AI, EA, AY, EY, and EI in 4 days. And so I was, yeah, and they've been doing a fantastic job. So, I mean, that was a success. That phonics lesson, learning those long A digraphs was tough.
What things did you do during the lesson that enhanced the lesson for students?
Well, I definitely think that kids need... The great thing about reading is having those small stations. Kids that are younger can't sit for long periods of time. And so having that, having those daily 5 stations where they rotate between read to self, listening, their small group time with the teacher, and word work really helps break up their reading time. And it's just amazing how time goes so fast.
Yeah, I noticed that myself when I was in there. It's like
I'm like, wow, lunchtime, let's go. So I really like that part, especially for those kids. Especially for kids who have short attention span. Knowing that every 15 minutes is going to be something new for them keeps them on task. And yeah, on task.
How will assessment results guide your planning for future lessons?
Well, that's a good question. Well, it's going to affect small groups because at the end of this week I will be giving comprehension assessments, and I'm saving that data and using that to form my small groups. So if there's a particular individual that really stood out in this unit, then maybe I'll look at them and putting them in a different reading group to meet their needs, their needs as readers. We also use those graphic organizers. We have graphic organizers, and that's an assignment that some groups are doing independently and some groups are having to do with the teacher. I can also use that as an informal assessment to just, kind of in my mind go, okay, these guys could do this on their own. Or, they're able to do this on, maybe they're really ready for the next reading group. Not sure there.
What goals do you have in mind for future lessons to build on student successes and skills?
Since visualizing and analyzing characters were our two skills, I see for future lessons just incorporating that terminology, not just in this unit, but in future units, and also using it not just in this curricular area, but I could be using it in writing. Practice visualizing before we write. What do I see happening in my story? Then go back to your story and write. Using analyzing character for their own, even for writing too, because focus on the character. Now, how are you going to show us what that character's feelings, inside and outside? How can you incorporate that into your writing? I see it being a real cross-curricular thing, not just necessarily just reading per se, and carrying it throughout the year, even in small group. Just because I finished main idea last week doesn't mean we didn't talk about main idea today, because that was one group got to talk about main idea. So what do you think on this page 15? What do you think the main idea of this page was, on top of the other two skills?
All right. Let me transition a little bit. I know that one of pieces that you wanted to talk about was the awareness with the student answering patterns.
Yeah.
Let's see. So what answering patterns did you notice during the lesson?
Well, when there was only 5 hands, I found myself, you just find yourself calling on those kids because, first of all, time constraints.
Yeah.
And you don't want to sit there and wait for these long pauses because you have to get through this lesson in 20 minutes to get onto your small groups. So that's a terrible excuse, but it's true, and I think other teachers feel that way too. But I did notice that I tended to call on those kids more, and then that's when you saw me say, all right, we need to see more hands. I know others of you know the answer, and I liked your idea of using the sticks too, but as far as patterns, it just seemed to be the same 5. It seemed like more girls than boys too.
Okay, that's okay. How did you feel about those answering patterns? More?
But I do have equal groups of girls than boys, so.
Let's see, the next one, what about the answering one? Trying to make sure that we're going to get you back on time. Okay, we got like 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, good. What goals do you have for generating student responses?
What do you mean?
When you're answering that, when you're asking the question and they're raising hands or not raising hands, kind of what are your goals? Are you wanting, I noticed one of the things I noticed is that you did switch up some of the ways that they responded.
Yeah.
Whether they were raising their hands or a choral response. So talk to me about how when you're looking at question and answering, what are you looking at, or how do you determine which strategy is effective for which types of questions?
Well, sometimes if a student is struggling with coming up with a response, I'll say, can I get a volunteer to help the student give them a whisper answer? Like for my ESL kiddos. I know that sometimes they can't answer some of those higher order thinking questions. So sometimes I'll let them do a whisper answer or ask a friend, kind of like the game show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, call a friend, ask a friend, sort of a thing. I could address that issue or, getting more student response by, using sticks or sometimes we always talk about in our groups as teachers too, is by when we let kids do more turn and talk, then they feel more confident in their answers. And so perhaps maybe, again, but we have time constraints, if there was more opportunities for them to talk in small groups rather than large groups, maybe they wouldn't feel so, apprehensive about sharing their answer out in a large group. Or maybe possibly, putting answers onto Grease boards and then sharing them. Or, I'm not sure if that's the answer you're looking for. But.
What are some other ways you could use, we're kind of addressing that, other ways to elicit student participation, or how does some of the responders need to respond?
Yeah.
And I think it does depend, too, on, like you said, not just the time constraints, but what's your goal for that?
Like how many responses do I want? Like
or am I just trying to vary things? Because we've been raising hands for a while, so now everybody's going to respond to get everybody back involved.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so it just kind of, I think some of that, because I did see,
that's a good point.
You really did switch around a lot of different strategies for engagement, because they were engaged. And so then,
I mean, but sometimes when you're up there, you're just thinking it seems
and
like Charlie Brown.
Kids. Yeah.
I mean, you got to come in and see a snippet of my day. I look at my day going, oh my gosh, I feel like I do the same thing all the time. But choral reading, partnering up, those are all great ideas. And maybe I'm not giving myself enough credit for what is going on.
Because I really did see a lot of different ones in there.
Well, good. I'm glad you got that. Well, then you write down the answers. I'm forgetting.
Well, good thing it's just the next day and not a week later.
Oh my gosh.
All right, let's see. Oh, some of the other questions about things I didn't particularly observe, before we start going through our classroom observation note guide tied to the standards.
Okay.
What are some ways you provide evidence of student learning to and communicate with families?
Let's see. What are some ways you provide evidence of student learning? Well, like I said before, I've been collecting writing records, and that's not necessarily something we share with parents, but I will share their reading level that comes from that assessment. I've been keeping what are called quick checks on the phonics lessons that we've been doing. Again, I'm not sure that would be evidence that's shared, but it would be used to explain marks on the PPR.
And those are coming up very soon, right? The parent conferencing.
Yes, those are going to be here in about 4 to 5 weeks.
And so when you go, what things help you prepare for those parent conferences? What kinds of things do you share with them at that time?
Well, this year I'm going to share their word study notebook, and that's where they keep a lot of their written work for reading time. I'm also going to be sharing their reader's response journal, which is a journal where they get to explain how they feel about a particular character or favorite part of a book, to let parents see how they're thinking about reading, and not just reading, but thinking about it too.
All right. What are some ways you use performance data for decision making and to impact learning?
And what exactly is performance data?
That depends on what you want to call it performance. That could be anything from performance on the check that you're going to have, the comprehension check at the end of this week, to benchmarking data, to past results, just all of that student achievement results in general. How does that help, or how does that inform?
Well, we use that data to form our small groups.
And it sounds like those small groups are flexible, that change based on how they're performing each week.
Yeah, and or by the unit, or some kids develop a little faster or pick up, or some kids who haven't read all summer, they just need that jump start, and before you know it, they're in a different reading group. But most of the data that's collected is to use that to form your small groups, to inform parents what their reading level is. It also can be used to if a student is in particular need or has a discrepancy compared to the other peers in the classroom, for the building assistance team, which is our BAT team, where we would refer someone we think might have special needs services.
All right, and tell me a little bit about what the assessment's going to look like for this little lesson or unit that's coming up.
It's a reading passage with 2 questions about the character, and then the other part of it is a graphic organizer where they have Little Red Riding Hood as the character, and they have to go back into the text, find 3 character traits, and then use clues from the text to explain why that trait was chosen.
Okay, good. It sounds like that aligns very well with what I know.
It's
you're a little scared.
Hard.
It aligns very well from the objectives that you had posted,
Yeah.
and from what I saw teaching yesterday, and what you're reinforcing according to this. So
it's going to be tough, though. It's going to be really hard.
And it sounds like some of the additional ways that you're assessing is the informal, and you can
Observation.
and how they're responding in the
Response,
small group,
yep.
and even it seems like some of the behaviors when you can tell when they're paying attention or not.
Yeah.
Okay, because I see that when I was observing, you're very good about catching those things before they become a problem.
Yeah.
Like the girl with the proximity,
Yes.
I noticed that too, before it became an issue. And that's something I've noticed several times in your classroom. Yeah. And the boy playing the stuff, the first time I was in there, right?
Don't even touch it.
So,
I truly have eyes in the back of my head.
that's good. You're a second grade teacher, you need them. What are some ways you could include students in the goal setting or an assessment?
That's a great question.
No, they are still just beginning of second graders.
They are, but I'm hearing from other school districts that they are asking their kids to, come up with learning goals for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That would require a lot of guidance, of course.
Right.
Probably even here are 3. Which one would you like?
But that's developmentally appropriate.
Yes. Boy, I don't know. What are some ways to include students in goal setting? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
By sitting down with them, I think I'm not sure if they would be mature enough. What suggestions would you have?
I'm thinking about how they do a little bit of that when they're having, I think it's the read to self time, and they had the buckets. And they are kind of choosing their own materials at that time. And I think the only other piece that I could see adding for that is how much progress you're going to make. Are you going to read this book in a day or a week, or
Yeah.
Because they're already halfway there.
Yeah.
So that's something I just see is already in there.
Mm-hmm.
That you already have the piece set up for. What are some ways that you collaborate on analyzing student progress? I know that you meet in the PLCs for planning.
Yeah.
And you saw I had that in there a lot with because it does affect a lot of things, and you can tell that you have a lot of planning and that you've been thinking a lot about what you're going to do. Sometimes overthinking, like you said about the script. So you could probably just, at your level, read the script and say, okay, I got it. Or I didn't think of this one, I'm going to incorporate this and go my normal route.
Yeah. And remember it the next time, or remember it the next year.
So when you're in those PLCs, do you do some analyzing the student progress, or do you kind of benchmark and see how the other teachers, their second graders, are doing this concept? Or,
I think if you're collaborating with just the reading teacher on that particular student, and you and her are sitting down and making those goals and what you want to accomplish with that child, or what kind of intense instruction are they going to need to receive. I'm not sure that it's necessarily with my collaborative group is aware that I might have this student, but me and the reading teacher and I are the ones who are setting up the goals and collaborating together to achieve success for that child.
Makes sense.
And how are we doing that? Well, we're looking at times that fit within our schedule. If that particular person is considerably low with their reading, they will get what we like to call double dosing. Where I have a particular student that's just not receiving 30 minutes, but receiving additional time because we need to get her up to grade level. So that might look like a more intense one-on-one instructional time.
Okay. And before I ask you about some of the professional development, because that's kind of going to close and get us ready for the next time, I'm just going to review some of the things, the evidence that I saw. And it'll be marked in many different places. One of the positive things I saw was the multiple strategies. Multiple instructional strategies used flexibly at different times. One of the a variety of research-based, developmentally appropriate, and scaffolded instructional strategies to engage and reach diverse needs of all students. And that's specifically with Standard 4.
Awesome.
I know that was one of the things I kind of talked about. Yeah. And then Standard 6 used evidence of a variety of classroom management routines, plans, procedures. They develop rapport. They create a safe, supportive, and respectful learning environment with high expectations for all.
Fantastic.
And so that, and it touches on many different things through here. And the students' knowledge of learning targets. I asked 3 boys, 3 girls.
How'd they do?
They did great. They all knew. They all knew exactly. They did. They all knew that they were making movies in their heads, and that it was important because then they know what they're reading, and then they know if you're in, like the boys, they showed me the books they were in individual reading time. Like if you have a book without words in here, or without pictures, you know what's going on. Or if your teacher asks you, you can tell her what's happening.
Oh my gosh.
They all knew it. So that was amazing.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
Let's see, and I used that under Standard 2B. Knowledge of student development to make learning experiences in the content area meaningful and accessible.
Awesome.
And I also included like this, but yeah, like every kid knew. Every kid knew. I was impressed because one of them kind of, I think she was just a little shy.
And that really means a lot because,
and I picked,
but you are kind of a stranger to my classroom, not Dr. Moorhead and those people, and they would expect that. But I'm so glad to hear that even though you weren't somebody that was familiar to them, they could still communicate their learning goal for the time. And not only that, I picked 6 kids that you didn't call on. Oh! So there were 6 kids that hadn't already demonstrated some kind of familiarity with the concept. Oh, that's fantastic.
So, yeah, there were 6. So that was really good. Let's see. So I kind of, in here, and I know you've had a chance to look over this document about some of the different things. Let's see. You like the clip chart? Yeah, I noticed every single little thing, you know, and how all those pieces come together for that. Using, and I talked about the strategies in different places. Let's see. Large group, 2 different settings, the read aloud, let's see. And I saw every standard, I saw a lot for that little, every Standard 2, everything in Standard 3, everything in Standard 4. I emailed it to her also, I don't know if she's looked at it yet, but Standard 1, everything that has a check mark by it, I saw it, and then, so that was like B, D, and E, and I put the evidence out to the side, and then Standard 5, I saw A and E, and put them over here. Now this is about aligning assessment with instruction, even though the posted goals were matching your instructional focus and matching what you were teaching and matching with the assessment. Yeah, and you weren't there to see some of this, you know, the other forms of assessment. That's why I was asking about it today. And then Standard 6, I saw everything in there for the classroom management and the professional growth. Yeah, that would be hard. Yeah, that would be hard. And then that's where I saw, I know that you do the collaborative planning with the benchmark learning, and so that's supporting the district and campus goals as well. So I was able to give credit for that. And Standard 8, same thing for C and D. And I just, since I'd already put I got detailed explanations. Yes. Now for next time, we're going to talk about the professional development plan. Okay. What additional data points or sources or artifacts do you think that I need to help start with that? Oh, boy. I don't know. I think it wouldn't hurt for me to come in another time or two and just see some other things. Okay. Do you have a copy of your current professional development plan? Well, I am doing a, I'm doing one of those ones where you have like the binder and you're keeping, oh, you caught me off guard on this one. I'm going to call it my IDPD. IDPD. I know. Is it IPDP or is it PDP? Oh. Individual professional development plans. IPDP. I think that's what. Yeah, that's I do, but I'd have to pull it out and show it to you. Okay. It's just a big old honkin' binder that my entire second grade career is. Our PLC has been doing since last year, last fall. Okay. So it's all of ours. We were allowed to collaboratively work together to build this
binder that has all of our evidence of all of our collaboration
Okay.
for almost a year and a half now.
Great.
So,
Can I look at that on Tuesday when I'm here? That will be much better. And then if there's anything I think that's important or, you know, then I'll make copies and I'll be here next Tuesday.
You're going to find our meeting notes in there. You're going to find techniques or strategies that we've used with each other to develop our collaborative or our PLC team. Yeah, it's just so chock full of things.
Okay.
I'll definitely get that for you, and you can look through that.
Okay, I'll be here next Tuesday. I have an appointment at 11.
Because that would be my evidence, truly.
And that sounds like that's going to have a lot of additional data points, sources, and then I'll come in. I'll try to come in the afternoon just for a little bit and see what that's like.
No,
because I've seen the morning a few times. So the next steps that we'll have is Tuesday. I'll come and look at that. Well, bring it in here probably and spend some time looking through that to get some ideas for the professional development plan that we're going to do next.
Okay.
And then I'll stop by in the afternoon. And when is your science? That sounded really fun from that parent conference.
Oh, I know, but now it's social studies, and that's just boring.
Okay.
I don't think you want to come
I'll take a look at your schedule and see when to come in.
Don't come watch social studies. You'll fall asleep. Because it's the end of the day and I'm about ready to fall asleep. Okay.
And then we'll use all this data together for this individual professional development plan. And if you have anything, you have my email. If you come up with anything in between, and I'll email you the forms, either the district ones or the course ones, and we'll come up with something for that.
Sounds good.
And I think our plan to meet for that is not next Monday, but the following.
Okay, so that week of Halloween then.
Yes.
So not
the Monday.
Okay, so 27th or 28th. Something like
all right, thank you so much. And you did get us a copy of this already, and I emailed it in your box.
Anything?
I talked with Dr. Moorhead, and she said there's no district form.
Okay.
They just talk, and it goes into a summative, which we won't have.
Yes.
You know, and so there's nothing to sign today.
Okay.
All right, thanks so much.
Welcome.